Today I want to look into the start of a presentation. So how can we start a presentation well that we can make our points and ship them across? That's actually a tricky thing because the start is important because that's what keeps the audience interested or bored right from the beginning on. And once you lost your audience, it's very hard to get them back. So let's see how we can do that in an effective manner and start well. If you start, you want to basically open the stage. You want to set the bar and you want to set it high. So you should always start strong to keep people engaged right from the beginning on. And you can do this by giving them a why. Tell them really early on, within the first sentences typically, why they should care. You should set the frame with your why. The topic you're talking about is important and why it should matter to them. And typically you start with why, setting the overall frame. Then you go to the how you want to address the problem, how you want to find a new solution, how you did something on an abstract level with respect to that frame. And then only the third part is the what. What do you want to do or what have you done? So always go from why over how to what. Never the other way around. It's simply easier to keep people engaged if you go from why, how to what rather than the other way around. What you should also do is tell your audience really early on what's in there for them in the sense of how will you enable them to do something which is called an empowerment promise. So tell them, by listening to your talk for 20 minutes, you will be able to solve a problem that you can't solve right now. There's something which keeps people engaged and avoids boredom really early on. Okay, but now let's get very concrete and how should we start? What should be the first sentence? It's sometimes hard to do that. I want to give you 6 ways on how you can start off your presentation in a strong manner. What you don't want to do is start boring, reading out the title of your presentation, which is written on the first slide most of the time. Or you also don't want to start with, I'm sorry, I didn't have enough time to prepare my presentation, but I will try to do a good job. The only good answer to someone presenting like this is to get up and leave the room, right? So you want to start strong. 6 ways how to do that well. First, you can start with a question. Start with a question showing that you engage the audience into the topic. Even if you don't really wait for an answer, it's the rhetorical question, it's something which is very strong and typically keeps the audience engaged. It's something which works really well and it's probably the most easiest start that you can pull off even if you're not an experienced presenter. The second thing you can do is you can start with a story. Especially if you want to communicate values or you want to make people act based on kind of the values, the story in the beginning is a good way to kind of set those values into perspective without nailing them down or repeating them explicitly. This works really, really well, but typically requires some experience, at least from my point of view. You can also start with a very bold statement, which is number 3. Making very strong statement, people think, oh, whoa, that's a bold statement, or, whew, let's see how we can live up to this, kind of a certain surprise that you're generating with this. This can be a very good starting point to attract the focus of attention to you, but of course you have to live up to that standard. Number 4, which is a good tool, is using a statistics or numbers to start with. So if you start with the statistics and then say what follows from that statistic which leads to your idea or as a motivation for your approach, this is something which can be very powerful because it gives you credibility. It says, the thing you're doing is actually really, really relevant and you started motivating this with a number or with a statistic. Something which works really well if you want to give credibility to the thing you're doing. Number 5 is what I call a challenge or a quiz. And this is a really good technique if you want to communicate an idea to a larger audience which is not necessarily from your field or has the same background than you have. And especially if you, for example, developed a new AI algorithm or a new approach which can solve something which is hard to solve for humans. So you can start with a challenge or a quiz and asking the audience if they could solve the problem easily and then make them fail and then show that your approach can actually do this. This is extremely good if you're talking to people from a wider field. In a PhD defense, this is a really great start now to make sure people understand that the problem that you have been solving is a challenging one. And this keeps the credibility for your approach high, typically throughout your whole defense. And this is something which is very good to do. Or last but not least, you can simply tell people explicitly what's in there for them right from the beginning on. what I'm going to give you to teach you is A, B, C, and it allows you to do C, D, E, or whatever it is. Being very explicit about what's in there for them is also a good way to start. And with this, I gave you a few tools at the end how you do a good job in starting. Maybe, as a last note, is if you have seen great talks such as TED Talks, which are typically very convincing presentations, you will see that a lot of people have a person dying in their presentation or motivating their work based on a friend or loved one who died. I'm not sure this is always a great idea. It's definitely sticky. It definitely makes people remember that, but I sometimes feel it's a bit too much, especially if you talk about scientific presentations when you want to ship your paper. I don't think it's always a good case to relate that with a death of a person. You can do that, it's sticky, but do that selectively if you want to go for that. But I would say no reason to let someone die. There are a large number of great other ways how to start a presentation. Thanks.